Alrighty, team. So we are gonna be doing something new here. So I kind of wanted to start doing some technique videos, see how I kind of like them. This is basically the same thing that I kind of do from athletes on I don't know, multiple times a week or weekly basis, depending on what we are doing with those athletes. But this is kind of the way I break down a lot of technique and the way I kind of try and explain things. So hopefully I can add kind of like this new way of actually explaining kind of what I want to go through on each lift. And then hopefully we can get these videos out on a fairly regular basis as we get like some good submissions. But so basically what we got for this week is we've got two pretty easy fixes and then one fairly interesting fix or issue that we actually don't really know if we can figure out a fix from just this video alone, but we've got some pretty interesting ideas and it's something that I can kind of talk about in related to actually coaching as well. So we'll go after that last. So we'll do our two easy ones first because these are fairly simple. So our first is this deadlift here from one of our Reddit friends. I'm leaving names out just for the sake of, leaving names out. So we're going to go through this. So this individual, he squats about 20 pounds more than he deadlifts. And for the most part, his deadlift is pretty good. We're going to see a couple of little things that I would like to see a little bit better. And we'll just kind of go in, I guess. Also, if anybody knows how to like automatically make it go to like HD, because it says it's like on the highest setting, but like I always want it to go to this one, and I don't know how to set that actually there. So what you're going to see is we're going to grab the bar. We're going to get into a mostly a good position. We're like 90% of the way there. And as we go through here, one of the things we're going to see is he's getting the slack out of the bar, but a lot of our slack out of the bar seems to be coming through here, and we're not wedging our hips as much as we could be. So we're extending through here, but we're leaving our hips a little bit further away from the bar than we potentially could be. So one of the things that I would like to see is as we are here, and he has grabbed the bar, and you're going to see what he does is he pulls his chest up, gets the slack out, and goes, right? Good. So that's good. This is actually often quite a bit harder for people to figure out than the actual problem that we're going to address here. So he's actually doing the harder part well, and then the easier part less so, which is actually kind of makes our job a little bit easier. So basically what I want to do is when we're in this position of pulling our chest up here, right? So he's about to go pull his chest up. Watch the hips. The hips are actually not going to go anywhere. And in this instance, I actually want those hips to kind of wedge into the bar that little bit more as we pull the slack out of the bar here. So we're pulling the slack out here, but we're not really pulling the slack out very much here. It's tight and it's not loose, so it's not a detriment, but our hip position actually just isn't giving us a net positive right now. It's not actually helping us. So what I want to see is as this chest pulls up and takes the slack out, I want to see those hips slam forward and then really initiate that pull, getting that slack out and throwing those hips under right away. So chest comes up and then our hips kind of lag a little bit. So what I want to see is when we're here, I want to see those hips slam through right out of the bottom, just so we can get those hips a little bit closer and we can get pushing through that little bit sooner. So this is multiple views of the same individual. So this is another one where you kind of see the back is pulling up and we've got the slack out, but our hip position isn't actually giving us any help currently. So bang, we just want a little bit more aggression right off that start position, just to make sure that those hips are bumping right through and we're getting that little bit more velocity out. So this may mean we're taking a little bit more time to extend ourselves upright and just making sure that those hips are wedged in forward, or we are going to be in, come here, where are you here? this position, and we're going to take our hips, we're going to shoot our hips back a little bit, just to like here, and we're going to push those hips through to kind of build up a little bit of momentum as we are pulling that chest up. So kind of right when we get here, I want to see those hips slam forward as this drives up. Right, and then we just need those hips come through a little bit more aggressively, and that should give you that little bit extra tension there off the floor floor to keep you going here. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that is a fairly simple thing to kind of make happen. And then our next one is this bench press here. So this is actually a fairly simple fix as well. Well, simple explanation, maybe complicated to actually execute, because especially with doing these videos here where I kind of have like a very limited context, I don't necessarily know if I'm going to tell you do X or Y. I don't actually know all of the scenarios for why maybe you can't do it. So this is a big thing that comes in when a lot of people explain things. Like you'll get someone's chest collapses, and someone will be like, keep your chest up. Okay, well, telling someone to keep the chest up may work, but if like it doesn't, right, and you've told them 10, 12 times, then how much benefit are you doing by actually telling that person to keep their chest up more? There's probably something else at play that is making their chest collapse, some lack of tension somewhere else, and it is your job to kind of find where that other lapse is. So we're peeling back layers to try and find it. So with this bench press, with the data I have at hand, we've got a couple of little interesting things. So first thing you're going to see is that we're going to see a lot of movement through the shoulders and through the head. So you just see as the bar pushes up, the head kind of wiggles around, the shoulder rotates a lot. Like we're rotating around like this, and you can see that active rotation. And you can also see the shoulder kind of like comes in and out as well. So when I'm saying that, you can see the shoulder kind of like pull out this way as we get stuck, and then you can see the head move around a lot as well. Also, you can see the bar pass is a little bit inefficient. We go up, and then we kind of go back, right? Where we probably want to smoothen that out a little bit more. So one of the things I want to see is, as we are here, actually, let's put ourselves in right about here. So the bar is solidly in the rack. We're getting ourselves set up. What I would like to see is for you to actually use the weight of this bar to wedge yourself down into this bench. So you're actively pushing up on this bar to push yourself into the bench. Second thing we need to do is we need to really exaggerate that scapular retraction. So really pull those shoulder blades together hard. Now, this is a thing, I see a lot of people that like will tell them, okay, get your shoulder blades retracted, get your scaps retracted, get your scaps depressed. So depression is taking your shoulder blades and pulling them down this way. So down this way along your torso. Scapular retraction is pulling your shoulder blades in together towards your spine. Okay, so what a lot of people say is, oh, I'm doing that. When you're doing your scapular retraction and your scapular depression, you do not just kind of set it and forget it. Scapular depression and retraction has to be an active thing. You have to actively be pulling those shoulders into position the entire lift. So right now at this point, we're pushing ourselves into the bench. We're pulling our shoulder blades in together, right? And this is actually quite hard. There's a lot of people, especially a lot of people with desk jobs, a lot of people who are sedentary, who are just starting to lift, who have very, very little control over your scapulas. So even if you're just walking around doing your day-to-day stuff, actually focus on being able to move your scapulas around. Like you should be able to move one scapula at a time. You should be able to raise it, lower it, retract it, protract it. Make sure that you can actually do all these things while you're just like standing around. Because if you literally can't do it when you're standing around and you're like, oh, I don't actually know how to make my scapulas retract, then how are we going to do it with load, right? If our body's already that dysfunctional. So that is a good thing to make happen. And if you can't do that, that is a problem that needs to get addressed rapidly if you actually want your technique to improve. So what we're going to talk about here is we're really going to want to get those scapulas retracted more here before we take this bar off the rack. So our scaps are getting retracted right now, and we're also making sure our scapular depression is happening, which is pulling our shoulders down towards our feet, making our neck very long. That's a very simple cue. Long neck, reverse shrug, right? So it's like if you're shrugging, you're pulling your shoulders up to your ears. Reverse shrug, depressed. actively push your shoulders down away from your ears, right? And you'll actually notice you'll get some elbow tuck by doing that without actually thinking about tucking your elbows. So that's another interesting little piece of information there. And those two you need to do with a fair amount of force. I'm repeating myself a lot, but I'm repeating it because it needs to kind of be said. So the other thing you're going to see is this bar actually gets rotated down. So as he's taking the bar down, his shoulder is rotating a lot. So you're actually going to see the bar goes like this. It slides forward and then comes down. It's rotating. I think someone has told him he needs to touch in a certain place. And now it's kind of like that is being taken literally. Like, okay, I'm going to rotate that bar down. Or what I've seen a lot of people is that standard J curve bar path where you touch and then come up. People will do that on their descent as well. And you don't want your descent really being like that because it's really hard to keep your scapulas retracted and then also rotate downwards towards your feet, right? So even if you're just sitting at your desk and you try and do that, like you're trying to rotate down, like my shoulders want to come out, right? So get your shoulders down, get your shoulders retracted, and then use your shoulder blade position to actually guide you straight down. And that's going to give you a much more stable touch than rotating down to an arbitrary spot. And if your shoulders are in the right position and you're following your shoulders, the lead of your shoulders for your touch point, they're going to put you in the right spot. So that's what we want. We want to see that active scap retraction and active scap depression. So at this point, what is that going to look like from this video? So what you would see if he gets a really good scap retraction is we would actually see this shoulder blade pull down. You would actually see him cover a little bit of this rogue lettering. The shirt would kind of fall over. And we'd see the shoulders actively get pulled down, and we see that rib cage pull up into the bar. So we'd want to see that for every single rep. And then we see here, we can see a little bit of shoulder motion. So what we're going to see, I'm going to pull this back again. We're going to see the shoulder rotate and kind of pull itself out this way. So just that little bit there, and we also see how there's that little bit of bounce on the chest. That is because we have that lack of stability, so the body is trying to get that bar up really, really, really quickly because it does not want to be down here because it doesn't have that stability. So we're pulling those shoulder blades down. We're also pushing that head into the bar. So these are our two big main things that I want us to work on for this individual. Also make sure that we're getting our leg drive into some use because what we'll also see is we're seeing that our legs are sliding forward on the way down and then they're kind of kicking back up on the way up. So what this is telling me is this is actually quite loose. So what you see here is you see how like this leg slowly slides this way, and then as the bar pushes up, and then it slowly slides down, and then legs are pushing up. We want those legs pushing this way towards your head, all the way down and all the way up, and you need to do that really, really, really hard. So think about flexing your quads, you trying to slide yourself actively off of this bench, right? Really jamming those toes down, really jamming those heels down, and we can get a lot of force generating out of these legs, but we need to also make sure it's going in a direction. So we want all that force going this way. Cool, so we've got our shoulders, we've got our legs now. I would say also if this is your comp bench, you can probably be pretty well serviced by going out a little bit wider. Again, that shoulder rotation that we're seeing is also probably a little bit of a byproduct of being fairly narrow because your shoulders are almost having to get out of the way to get your elbows and your upper arm down to the position that they need to touch. Whereas if we can get rid of a little bit of that range of motion, we can keep the shoulder blades in that position that we want while we are actually coming down to our touch point, and that's going to give us a lot of stability. So now the second video that we got here from the same individual is another deadlift. So we've got a similar problem as the first one. So this is kind of an interesting one because I'm almost kind of waiting for him to start, and then the start just kind of happens, and I'm like, oh, okay. But basically what I would like to see here is a little bit more of a hip bump in to this pull. So we're here. So what I would like to see is I would like to see a big breath in here and really exaggerated push into the abs onto those legs to pull yourself upright. Really take a lot more of that slack out. You've got a little bit here because I can see that bend, but you've got a little bit more room to go. And to make sure that we are also getting a little bit more push down through our quads. So as we're pulling our chest up, as we're pushing our abs into our legs, we're also loading up our legs by really pushing those feet into the floor hard. So I want to see that really big breath, that really big push, and then really pulling that chest up. And then I want to see those legs really engage hard off that floor. What we're seeing right now is you're almost being a little bit gentle with it. And also see we can't really lock out here because we didn't get enough tension on those glutes and hamstrings off of the floor to actually get us to start. So really big breath, really big brace, really make sure we're bracing through our abs and through our obliques, and that we're really pulling our chest up away from the bar, but we're not losing our abs by pulling our chest up. The abs and chest up needs to happen at the same time, and neither of them can take away from the other. What you'll see is a lot of people, especially with a very generic cue like chest up, is what a lot of people will do is they'll let their ribs come out and they'll let their ribs flare out. And what that's actually doing is it's stopping you from getting your abs fully locked in. It's stopping your obliques from fully loading properly. And then you're going to end up pulling with your mid back, even though you tried to pull your chest up. And then you're probably going around. Someone's going to tell you to keep your chest up again. And then we have this kind of vicious cycle of not really knowing what to do. So making sure that these abs get pulled down and our rib cage gets pulled down with our abs, and then we pull our chest up against that is going to be really important. So now the second one we have is actually a really interesting case. So I think this is actually a little bit less of a technique issue and a little bit more of we actually have some kind of issue going on with either the nervous system, something in the musculature isn't functional for whatever reason. So what we're going to see here is this is a lift that got hit fairly easily before. I think it's a set of 5. At one point, the foot cramps up here, so we've got to take a little bit of a delay. And I don't hate this technique. Actually, everything looks pretty good when the lifts are going right. We're wedging into the bar. She's pulling her chest up away from the bar, but she's not losing that rib position. So you can see how that slack is really being pulled out here and the hips are engaged. And then what we're going to see is this is, I think, this is less weight. Yeah, so this is actually less weight on the second video. And what we're going to see is bang and nothing, right? So this is really interesting. So what we're seeing here is on this video, for whatever reason, we're getting here, and instead of wedging ourselves into the bar, right, this is the same training day, right? So the set that she just did was actually right before this one, which makes it really interesting because we hit more weight easily, and now at a lighter weight, it's like literally not coming off the floor. What we're seeing here is there's no wedging into the bar, so the hips aren't really driving into the bar, and the chest isn't really pulling up and away. And then we're loading right into that mid back, and we've got nowhere to go. So what we're looking at in this instance, from what I'm kind of thinking here, is that it's a technique issue and it's not a technique issue. So one of the other things that we're doing here, sorry, I'm going back and forth. I should stay at this one. Is so now you have to make sure that you're actually talking to your athletes when we're discussing this. So these are kind of one of the things that we're talking about here. And so when we discuss this lift, one of the things that she's saying is she's like, I literally I don't feel a difference. All I know is that I'm pulling and one of them goes well and the other one does badly, and I can't actually feel a difference for why I can't pull this off the floor. So this is really, really, really important. Especially when you're doing technique, especially when you have someone that is having a hard time, is you have to get into their head to find out what they are feeling, right? So it's really, cool to throw out like a 2-word cue and to have it work. But to make your entire coaching philosophy on, trying to come in clutch with these simple mind-breaking cues that are just gonna work for everybody, they're not, right? It's not going to be a realistic approach to coaching. So this is kind of one of these things where we really need to sit down and figure out what is going on. So now this individual has gone to a physiotherapist or a PT, whatever you want to call it. And one of the things that they actually haven't looked at is any kind of nerve issues. So this could be something like you sit down all day and then, all right, like especially this happens a lot of like office workers and office workers, students, somewhere where you're sitting down a lot of the day, right? Your posture is in a certain position. Your shoulders slump forward. Your pelvis is tucked under, right? Your abs are shut off. Your hip flexors are super tight. Now, all of these things can kind of add into several different kind of facets of movement, right? So if you have something that's super tight, especially with powerlifters, for example, tennis elbow or golfer's elbow, right? A lot of the times we will get very mucked up shoulders and pecs. Like our pecs are going to be really tight. Our shoulders are not going to be the happiest. They're going to be a little grumpy with us. And all of that tightness in that shoulder region is going to start inhibiting those nerves that are going into our elbow, right? The ulnar and the radial nerve. And what those will actually do is those nerves know that they're being kind of impinged and they know they're being kind of compressed, right? So what they will do is they will be inflamed as a stress response. And then we'll go, oh, I got tennis elbow, right? So people will do a lot of stuff. They'll massage their biceps, they'll ice their elbows. But if you're not actually fixing that mucked up shoulder and pec, and then all the other things that come in with that, tight scalenes, the subscapular, all that. If you're not getting all of those fixed, all you're doing is putting a band-aid on your elbows. So if we need to get all of those things fixed, and that's kind of a similar thing that we've kind of got possibly here. We have someone who has a desk job or has a job in academia. So they are doing a lot of sitting. So it's very easy for our posterior chain to kind of become dysfunctional because of kind of a lack of use. So one of the things that I would say is if we can get ourselves to go for a 10, 20-minute walk, I don't need anything crazy. I don't need you climbing mountains. I literally just need your body to figure out, oh, okay, I am moving now, right? Get these kind of things in place. And do a couple other little warm-ups here. So this is, I think this is like 130, 140 kilos. And then, so you'll see this one goes, and then this next day, the same weight. This is, I think, like later on in the week. The same weight just doesn't go, right? And we see our position is good, right? Our position is good. There's not a real difference in the positions. It's just what is functional, what is not. And again, this is from 20 minutes of discussion on like Instagram DMs to try and figure out some stuff. So I don't have the full picture, but this is kind of what my guess is we've probably got something that is dysfunctional, probably from lifestyle in the way that our glutes and hamstrings, or something that is not allowing us to pick up tension sometimes. So basically what's happening here is we're not getting tension, and then we're loading up into our mid-back. We're loading up into our mid-back, and to pull things off the floor with our mid-back just doesn't work. So our glutes and hamstrings and our quads, everything going downstream here just is not working for whatever reason, but on another day it is. And on those days, this athlete isn't actually feeling a difference in technique. It's not like, oh, I feel like I'm pulling with my back this day. Oh, I'm feeling like I'm getting good tension today. It's going and then it's not going. So this is something that medically seems like we've probably got something going on that's not just muscularly. But this is just something that I really want to bring up because this is actually something that is actually quite frequent. And you'll see a lot of people try and cue and do little techniques to go through this, but if the issue isn't necessarily the athlete's technique and it's an underlying issue, then we're just telling them things and we're not actually giving them a solution, right? We're just kind of telling them things to fix that they can't fix. We're kind of setting those athletes up for failure. So that's kind of the reason I want to throw this one in here as well, because we do have this weird underlying issue probably that we need to get fixed. So I'm hoping that this was interesting. Hopefully I didn't ramble on too much. probably did. We'll probably be a little bit more succinct as we go on. But I think that'll be it for mostly for this video. Hopefully I gave you some useful tidbits here. Hopefully there was some things for everyone else to think about in terms of kind of coaching, how you approach your own technique. And then we'll go through a lot of other things as I can get different, really interesting little tidbits of technique breakdowns and whatever little problems that people seem to have. So other than that, that is pretty much it here for this week's video for our Technique Tuesday series.